Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the Nerdy Playbook, The World of Averant. Now, last time we talked, the group themselves has already spent several months together, dealing with both sessions that are of import to bring up here and sessions that were fun, but not necessarily need to break down every single minute of it. Talked about them already finding a rival, Valerius for Carey. That's already a threat, but they don't know what and why. They encountered their first god. They were told that there's a bigger path for their group if they follow it correctly, but they will not be told what the path is. They must fall. They must actually go. And they were told that their next person to speak to is Raziel, god of mysteries and the trickster of most of the gods. But they were given a warning. Raziel does not like half-breeds, and currently does not like the Great Journey. Due to the mishap and the fact that there was a lie and Seraphina's brother died for it, Raziel is one of the gods that believes that the mortals failed. They lied to us. Let's not give them a second chance. We can restart this world and screw the plague. But many of the gods thought otherwise, that they can still redeem themselves. This is not that grave an offense. But either way, Raziel is still his own god, and he can make his own choices. He's still obligated to answer the call of the Great Journey, but he can make it difficult. Go on strike, as it were. But they still had some time before they got there. Raziel was quite far away. Very far away. His location was in Tyriok. Even though it was still connected to Heartwind, they were in the mid-southern parts of Heartwind. Getting up all the way to the northern parts that connect to Tyriok would take them months of time, if not a year. Between then, many things have happened. They took many journeys on their way there. And with the unfortunate discovery of the loss of her family and her home, it took Seraphina some time to finally push forward and move on with the Great Journey. And they persevered on until they hit a harbor coast town, where in the distance, in the dark of night, they see a man standing out in the distance on a small rock, looking. And not explaining why, Valerian recognizes him, saying that that's her brother. But then he starts moving closer, and the mound starts getting bigger, until you start seeing eyes on the mound. You notice it's not actually a mound, it is the head of a creature that this person is standing on. And as it gets closer, the illusion of the person disappears, and you see it's a large, devilish paladin riding this creature until it starts coming out. You start hearing footprints as it touches the ground surface. And coming out of the water, you see this large, what is known as the Plague Dragon, the pet creature of the Plague King. As you can tell, that what is riding this Plague King, controlling it, is the Plague Dragon is the Plague King itself. As they immediately run and hide and wonder what the hell does this creature want with them. Now, for the longest time, the plague itself never took itself a physical form. It had no reason to. It was a creature that was stretching and destroying, until eventually it noticed that there was a threat to the world, a threat to it. So it started to learn and adapt, and it decided that it needed to create itself a host, a body to throw its power into. And at this time, the plague itself was genderless. It adapted to whoever it took over, female, male, whatever. Plague King, Plague Queen, they were just labels. It eventually started creating its own identity, but that's how it always was determined from the outside. And as this armored giant riding a huge ancient dragon comes up, they immediately have to run, hide, and understand this later and survive first, unknowing why the dragon is even here. Usually the dragon itself is a warning that the plague is approaching and making sure that it deals with any opposition that weaken the plague. But the plague is not this far, nowhere close. And to see the Plague King away from its domain is rare. And as they run, they hide, they bob and weave and eventually lose it into the woods itself. It was eventually made a discovery later on that Valerian found in a dream that she believed to be true, that she doesn't understand how, she doesn't understand why, but that was her brother. Yet it was the Plague King. Unsure of what, they tried to understand. The rest of the group believed her. If you believe that was your brother, that was your brother, but that was most certainly the Plague King. And that was the Plague Dragon he was riding. Valerian was confused, unsure of this. She knew that whatever she discovered was true, but how? Was this merely just an illusion that they were able to avoid? A dream of sorts? No answer made sense. What they just saw defied thousands and thousands of years of knowledge, even though limited. It was almost there to intend to inform instead of destroy. Just enough to show who I am, what I can do, and then I'll just fly off. Very irregular for the Plague King. To even show himself is rare enough. But this also gave them a gleam of hope. Things are changing. If this means that the Plague King is moving around, maybe he finds something a threat. If there's a threat, we will find this threat, this to him, take it, response in kind. More drama now entering the group. With now the confusion of why do we think this is your brother, to trying to understand everything in the past several days. Many months have passed where they are traveling and they're trying to answer this question. Trying to understand everything. And this overtakes the previous problem. How do we get Heartwind back? At this point, this is so important that the loss of Heartwind is gone out of their minds. The overall main objective is still clear. We must make our way to Tirac. It will still take us some time. And as months pass, they make their way as quickly as possible, with much opposition in the way. As even before they get close to Tirac, Raziel's reach gets pushed through, gets thrown into the mist, and more or less puts them in a sense of loss. The ability he has of mysteries is like a trickster, constantly putting people in emotional confusion, psychological unknowing, and constantly throws them into riddles to open up doors that are so simple and they make them complex. But knowing that all these things are going on, and the possible threat on Seraphina's life, they decided to take the long route, taking the main straight way to Tirak is long, but it's treacherous. It's going to take longer, but we can at least be safe going through the woods to the much further way west across the coastline. But unfortunately, they discovered even more treacherous problems. Yes, they avoided the main streets and anybody who would have a problem with Seraphina, but now they accidentally go into a cove where remnants of the plague and creatures that have been affected by it remain. And they see firsthand, as they have to sneak their way around, creatures that have made a home in this large, dark part of a forest. Creatures themselves that have been mutated for years and years, that have transformed so much of the mutation that human form is lost. And they are now monstrosities. Creatures that, if you didn't know better, were just that, born that way. Nightmarish fiends now exist in their place. Souls gone, and only decide to kill and feast. Taking this way allowed them to avoid Raziel's reach. Where the plague goes, gods can barely touch. This is a double-edged blade. You want the gods' protection, but in this case, Raziel is no help. But now you're going to have to deal with the plague. And this is, again, a double-edged sword. They need to understand what the plague is. And they will never really truly know how to defeat the Plague King until they at least try to fight some of its biggest creations. And this was definitely a spot for that. And as they have a decent time trying to sneak through, eventually they are spotted. And they must start fighting off these nightmarish abominations. Creatures that are left only to textbooks and should never be seen. Leaving nightmares in your head for weeks on end. If not drive you crazy to what their forms entail. Madness is what they leave behind if you survive. As they spend several weeks inside this area, crossing through it, they're able to survive several waves. And eventually find out that this is too much, they gotta go a different way around. As they make their way out of the dark forest and into more of the true forest itself, where they still are left with fiends, as they cut their way through a river bend, weeks on end, cutting their way and able to survive most of the creatures. Getting out of the river bend, they finally get out to a long distance to finally, after months on end, see Tirak in the distance. They are finally there. Mere weeks until they can reach Tirak. So close to the next mission. As they all start to fall, with only a few noticing that there's a smell in the air. Few of them immediately go unconscious, as the last couple, Seraphina and Valerian, pass out, but they see images of pirates capturing their prey. Between the time of the last session I had and this, is actually a decent amount of episodes. We had about 10-15 sessions, but they were battling plague, trying to avoid people. Not enough for us to bring up real details into. We're actually getting pretty far into the story. And coming up next is where this story is going to start to get good. Where death comes online. Where this is more than what they expected. So, we're going to end the session there. I appreciate you all for joining in this short little podcast that we have. And next Friday, I will have another session talking about being captured by the pirates themselves. But know that the return of the Plague King will have come. And with that, the questions of who is it and why do I keep seeing my brother will eventually be answered. So, thank you for joining. Do not forget that tomorrow is episode 1 of 3, live at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. That we will have our new horror series starting with 2 of our players, one that plays Seraphina, Fig, and Mixus, and our other that plays as Dira, joined together to do a Resident Evil style 3-part series in a world where magic is forbidden, and a team called Dredge must be sent out on missions where dark magic is being used and must erase the remnants of what is left. Everybody have a fantastic weekend.